Believe you can, and trust me, you are halfway there. It's a beautiful Monday morning from our studios here. Welcome to West Breakfast, that youthful minded program where we discuss everything as it relates to Nigeria and beyond, ranging from leadership, governance, mental health, wellness tips, AI, and innovations. Besides, we don't just discuss, we also bring in expert guests to contribute their expert views to our conversation. My name is Omoto Shola Sharimake. Welcome to the show, and of course, I'm not here alone. I'm here with my ladies. I mean, it's a full squad this morning. Hello, ladies. Good
Good
morning. Good
morning.
morning.
How
I
are
feel
you?
like I have different ladies from different quarters of the world.
Yes,
One is from
representing the
south,
East.
south east, north east. Hello, ladies. How have you ladies been? I mean, it's a fresh start. Monday morning, back from the weekend.
Yes.
How are we all doing?
I can't believe that I want to say this, but I'm very excited about the week. I'm like, this new week, bring it on. Let us see what you have got. I'm ready for you.
I love it.
Energy level.
E for energy.
God's grace. What about you?
I mean, I think I'm opposite of her actually. I'm so
And
tired.
she's by my side. I think we should move. Don't nobody should
very
disturb my
tired.
energy this morning.
On a more serious note, yeah, I don't think I had like a very restful weekend. Even though I was not doing a lot of stuff, right? But I don't know why I wasn't just able to rest. So yeah, that's how it went for me.
I didn't have
I
a restful
feel too.
weekend too, but the thought of what is ahead this week,
The
my
total
to-do
make me
list,
want a bougie.
my to-do list is already keeping me on my feet. So I guess that's just it for me.
That's cool. What about you? Shantu?
Well, the weekend felt short, but then I'm glad to be here and then I have strength, so let's go for it.
Strength,
Let's
very
see how the
important.
week turns out.
So one is energetic, one is not too energetic, one is
In the middle.
somewhere in
You
between.
come, where you come there.
For me, I mean, my weekend was a roller coaster. It was stressful. Friday, normal, I'll get home very late. So Friday was obviously out. But that Friday, I met with chunk of work at home to do. Then Saturday, yes, I escaped for a little bit. Then I came back. I had to come and, when you're in your house, like, okay,
Yes.
I don't have much to throw around, but that bill came to look for you in the house. And the bill did not just come, it came with, and Sunday church, then meal prep, then work and all of that. But I think
And you're back again
I'm
to the circle.
tilting more to our side. I feel really tired. And the cold, am I the only one feeling cold?
No,
Nah,
yesterday
cold
in
is my
church,
thing, actually.
I was just looking for jacket up and down. The cold was
We had that
terrible.
same morning.
It was
Nah.
terrible
The
yesterday.
cold was a bit much. Anyways, if you are here to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV, click the subscribe button now, like and share the link to family and friends. Today, we will be discussing how the NSAS/hunger protest has transformed Nigeria's activism scene. This is coming after 4 NSAS protesters were just released after 4 years. And of course, we will be joined later by an expert guest who is also an activist. He has been a student leader right from the days of Obafemi Awolowo University and is still an activist up until now. He'll be joining us later via Zoom to dissect this topic with us. Right now, we are going on a break. When we return, our headlines across the globe will be coming on board. Please be on standby. It's a pleasure to have you back from that break. You're still on to Ways Breakfast, hashtag what are you saying? And now we are diving straight into the headlines across today's newspaper. Today we have the Guardian newspaper, we have the Daily Trust newspaper, we have the Nation newspaper, and of course the New York Times. And I will be starting with the Guardian newspaper, which has a lot of headlines written on them. The major headline reads, FX execution hitches strengthens food waiver policy as farmers kick. Serap asked governors Wike to disclose details of Chinese loan. Beside it, the unholy secrecy of NAS members' pay package. Beside this, on insecurity challenges, 2 killed in Abuja, Shiite police clash, bandits kidnap 150 persons in Sokoto. Under the major headlines, Atiku shades Tinubu over citizens' rights violation. Okonjo Iweala asked politicians to stop weaponizing insecurity. Again, terrorist strike in Kaduna, kidnapped district head, 6 others. Enugu uncovers 2,640 ghost pensioners, begins payment of cancelled pensions. And from the foreign scene, Tunisia president reshuffles cabinet, replaces 19 ministers ahead of election. For details of this, go quickly to the page of the Guardian newspaper to read more on these stories. Let's take a look at the Nation newspaper.
Okay, so I'll be taking the Vanguard newspaper, and I'll begin with the major headline, FG yet to implement 2 months after. FG still working on implementation framework 2 months after, said by the minister. Delay not worth it. People are dying. Governments must progressively intervene in high tariffs. Implementation details must be properly worked out. And on top of the newspaper, we have court freezes 32 accounts linked to end bad governance protest. Underneath that, we have FG moves to eliminate malaria, picks Dangote, Otedola, Elumelu to drive efforts. Beside that, we have Catholic bishops, canvass regional governments, ask Tinubu to fight hunger grafts. And Nigerians hope for lower cement price, dims. Now, I'll be looking at this particular headline, FG moves to eliminate malaria, picks Dangote, Otedola, Elumelu to drive efforts. Okay, so the federal government at the weekend moved to reduce the scourge of malaria in Nigeria with the choice of Africa's richest persons, Aliko Dangote, Femi Otedola, and Tony Elumelu, to lead the fresh efforts to eliminate the menace. Speaking at the inauguration of the team in Abuja, the Minister of the State of Health and Social Welfare, Dr. Tunji Alausa, stated that the country currently contributes over a quarter of global malaria cases and about a third of the over 600,000 malaria deaths worldwide, mostly affecting children and pregnant women. Well, for them to bring together all the African richest people, that means they are looking out for something. I think they can highly contribute to maybe finding solutions to malaria, probably.
Together, is it to pull resources together?
Probably, yes.
I have
Because
issues
they
with
have
this thing. During COVID-19, everybody was contributing 1 billion, 10 billion. How many of us got the money? Eco Hotel is about to drop, or maybe it dropped already. It dropped about 1 million. Shaburi, I think it dropped about 1 million to contribute to something. It doesn't get to the root. I feel like if you want to contribute, you are heading a company like UBA Bank. At least, if everybody's not UBA Bank, we have at least 4 out of 10%, or even 5 out of 10% using UBA Bank. Okay, use that UBA Bank means to give everybody 5,000 naira. Okay, even if it's just 2,000 naira. Okay, let's just say between the range of 2 years to 18 years to 25 years. Give them 2,000 naira. They will appreciate, and Nigerians are so appreciative. They will go to Twitter to start shouting, Elumelu did this, Elumelu did that. Don't go and be giving our government, our federal government, 10 billion naira that will not get to us. It doesn't work that way. Don't let me be angry too much. Because today, I think I would raise my voice a lot.
I think you still have to raise your voice because if you know what's on Daily Trust this morning, I should put you on it. Are you ready? So the major headline reads, Bandit abduct over 150 in Gober, and Inspector General hands over 20 rescued medical students to Unimad and Unijos VCs. Tinubu orders mourn as Emir of Ningi buried amid tears. Court freezes 32 bank accounts linked to end bad governance protests, and 2 cops traders killed as police shit clash in Abuja again. Patrols, vehicles burnt, group members came with bombs, and policemen killed our members. So, like I said, get ready to be angry again. I think Daily Trust just had to focus a whole lot on, insurgency and insecurities in our nation. So I'll take the major story beneath the bandit story. The 2 cops traders killed as the police shite clash in Abuja again. So 2 police officers and a trader, they were killed around Wuse Market, Abuja, yesterday during a fresh clash between the police and the members of the proscribed Islamic movement in Nigeria, popularly known as Shiite. It was learned that the IMN members were on an Arabian demonstration to commemorate the 40th day after its Ashura anniversary. So the police command in the Federal Capital Territory had, on July 16, said it banned all forms of protest by IMN groups and prohibited the group from carrying out its planned Ashura procession. So yesterday's clash was also said to have left 5 other policemen injured and 3 patrol vehicles burnt. And this is as the IMN said police officers attacked and killed several of its members. And back and forth, back and forth. So let me just give you a brief summary of the story. So these group members, right, they always celebrate this Ashura anniversary. The paradox of the story is that the anniversary is meant to honor people that were martyred, people, that were killed for just cause in that sense. And it's one IMN Islamic movement kind of celebration. So the police were against this, right? And it didn't end up well. So a lot of clashes to the end that policemen were killed. So it's just like the table has turned. The people now being brutalized are who? The police people. And that's the story that I have from the Daily Trust.
I guess the reason why they were being brutalized is because El Zakzaki was being imprisoned one time, who is the Shiite leader, by President Tinubu. And I don't think up until now he has been released. Yeah, so maybe that was why they don't want them, because they believe they're a part of Muslim. They are really, really not accepted. Let's look at the New York Times. Let's expect some good news from there.
I think there is actually. All right, so the New York Times newspaper, or I start up a newspaper, has in Catholicism, actually, Vance adopts a resistant political court defined by his conversion. Next to that, we have abortion rights. Face stiffer test on ballot in 4 measures in 10 states. Below the picture where we have the students there, that's by the left side, we have Israel, inside Israel's pursuit of Phantom, who guides Hamas war. Beneath that, we have colleges target Gaza protesters with new rules. Next to that, by the green DMZ, farming exceptional honey. And next to that as well, which is the last headline on the newspaper, has how can an anti-police group hold its founder accountable? So the headline I want to quickly touch on is the one that has the abortion right face stiffer test on ballot in 4. So, as we all know, abortion is legalized nationwide in the United States by the Supreme Court as at 1973 decision in Roe versus Wade, which established a constitutional right to abortion. However, in June 2022, the Supreme Court overturned, the Roe versus Wade with its decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Now, this ruling removed federal protection for abortion rights, allowing individual states to regulate or ban abortion as they seem fit, right, or as they deem fit. Now, coming over to what's going on, I mean, the fact that we have the Democrats and the Republicans, Democrats are actually going for, abortion rights to be legalized across. I mean, the fact that, according to what I just read now, the fact that during the Dobbs versus Jackson case, the federal kind of removed its hand from anything that has to do with an abortion, right, and put it to the states in the United States and said, okay, you know what? If the person, handling the state feels like abortion rights should be legalized, fine and good. If the person says abortion rights should not be legalized, fine and good. It has nothing to do with the federal, right? So each state now, about 10 states have actually, conducted the test. Sorry, not test now. They have conducted, what do they call that now? elections in agreement, polls, yes, in agreement, and 10 states have agreed that, okay, we want abortion rights to be legalized in their states. But in Florida, it's a bit of issue. I mean, the fact that, let me quickly read this. So in Florida, the challenge is especially tough because the state requires a 60% majority to pass amendment rather than a simple majority. Now, for these 10 states, they just need simple majority to pass. And I mean, they have actually approved it right now. But in Florida, you need a 60% majority, which is something that is still taking a lot of time. So let's see how it goes. I mean, the fact that 10 states are already out of the 50 states they have in the U.S. They're already in agreement already with the abortion rights. I just hope that the rest of the states, you know, kind of agrees. I mean, again, it depends on the individuals there. If they feel like they want, you know, abortion to be legalized and all of these things, of course they will. But let's just see how it goes. So
Thank you very much for explaining that to us. Before we go on that break, let me just ask us, moral apart, morally, I mean, let's remove our moral sentiment. Do we think abortion is something that should be legalized in our country?
There are different contexts to
I said let's remove our moral.
I'm removing moral and I'm giving you the context of health now. Right? And this one is not moral.
Right,
this one
let's
is
hear it. Let's hear it.
Like health conditions, right? There are health reasons why people would have to abort their children or the unborn babies, and it's not related to moral. So it depends on the context.
It's a yes for you.
I would say it's a yes for me. Don't put me
yeah,
in that
yeah,
corner. It's a box I don't want to get into because there are different contexts to look at
I don't
it.
want to carry the child.
So it's a yes for you because of rape victims,
Yes.
unwanted pregnancies. That's good. What about you?
That's the
I didn't
thing.
say yes. So this you are putting us a yes and no.
in a way.
What about you?
No, see, with the current state of Nigeria right now, I feel like there's some things that we should not even be talking about. Do you know why? Because I mean, look at pepper, the price of this thing. So imagine someone, a rape victim,
is
as
that
she
a
said,
yes for you?
I mean, in a position. I cannot say whether it's a yes
I
or
think
no.
it's a yes for me. I mean, considering so
why?
many reasons. The same way we have family planning, they will always give you, oh, these are terms and conditions. The same way we have ICU or IUD implants, they will not just implant it to your body, they will educate you on that. So the same way they will not, you know, that Nigerian nurses, they want to put their Redeemed Church and Sunday school lesson forward first. So I think it should
But
be
you know,
a
there
yes.
are a lot of negative things that happen with abortion too.
They will explain to them at the clinic, but I think it should
For
be
secondary
yes.
school
That's the
students,
thing.
they were explaining it to
It should be
secondary
18
school
plus
students.
now.
You see, dude.
In boarding schools.
You want to say something?
We talk about
in boarding schools, they were explaining it to them. Let's not go further.
We have to go on this break. When we return, we'll be coming back with our guests to have the conversation around SARS and hunger protests. Please be on standby. You're welcome back to the show. As mentioned earlier, we will be discussing how the SARS and hunger protest has transformed Nigeria's activism scene. The SARS protest of 2020 and the hunger protest of 2024 marked a significant turning point in Nigeria's activism scene, reshaping the landscape of social and political advocacy in Nigeria. This movement, driven by the widespread discontent with police, brutality and economic hardship, ignited a new wave of activism. The protest united a diverse condition of Nigerians, particularly the youth, who harnessed the power of social media to mobilize, organize, and demand change on unprecedented scale. Today, we will be exploring the evolution of activism in Nigeria, the rise of digital advocacy, and the role these protesters have played in challenging and reshaping the nation's political landscape. And of course, I'll be having this conversation with an activist himself, a human rights activist, a national coordinator, education rights campaign, ERC, the civil society group, who is also a part of the YRC, is also an ex-OAU student leader, student activism leader. It was also a major, it was one of the forefront at the just concluded hunger protest. Is no other but Mr. Hassan Taiwo Soweto. Good morning to you. Glad to have you join us.
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. So quickly, you were at the forefront of the hunger protest. I saw your clips of you at Ikeja. You came out with your group and you made your opinion known. I'd like to ask you, during the during the hunger protest, I mean, I need you to give a quick observations of what you noticed before the protest, during the protest, and after the protest. When I mean after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's speech.
Well, I think that the hunger protest, which we had from August 1st to 10th, marked a decisive movement in the country. It demonstrated very clearly the Nigerian people, the Nigerian youth, had lost their fear of the government and the police, especially when it comes to the attempt to criminalize protest, because that protest unfolded despite the attempt to scare people, despite the intimidation, because on the very first day of the protest itself, you would have thought that the protest was not going to happen because of all of the intimidation and scare tactics that the government and the agent of the ruling party unleashed the days prior. So the mere fact that Nigerians were still able to come out in Lagos and across different other states across the country, it's something that is really uplifting. And the way the protest itself went, especially in Lagos State, where despite, all of the, intimidations and all of the fears that have been created, that the protest was peaceful and organized, it's also a testament, to the ability of the Nigerian youth and Nigerian people to actually be able to organize themselves, in civil disobedience without necessarily leading to crisis and destruction. And this is very important because don't forget that the government has been using what happened at the tail end of SARS 4 years ago, the destruction that happened in Lagos, to try and scare people away from protests, to equate protests, to mindless and wanton destruction of properties. The mere fact that for 10 days, we're able to have this successfully in Lagos without any major incident happening, it's a testament, to the ability of the Nigerian people to organize themselves. But even afterwards, what we have seen, after the protest, where in places like Lagos and other areas, we are trying and keep the movement alive, to try and keep it rooted and strong in anticipation of, another emergence on the street. It's also an indication that we are also in a position now as Nigerian youth to have movements that are long-lasting. Don't forget that we have had 2 cycles of a social movement or mass movement, over the past 1 decade in this country. In January 2012, we had the anti-fuel subsidy movement, which broke out on the scene, on January 3rd of 2012. But immediately after the protest, itself ended, the movement sort of evaporated. And in 2020 October, we had the End SARS movement, which also we would say evaporated immediately after October 2020, after the Lekki Toll Gate massacre. In this situation, in the current cycle of movement we are in now, there is an attempt to try and keep it alive beyond those 10 days, to try and re-emerge on the street again, but also most importantly, to also see how that movement can be utilized, to achieve more thorough change in the way the country is run. So that really gives me a whole lot of, confidence, that we are now in an era of long-lasting movement that does not just achieve the bread and butter demands, but that can also be utilized to achieve the thoroughgoing social change. Because at the end of the day, all of the issues we are raising around questions of fuel price, cost of living, can only be resolved on the basis, of political changes. That is on the basis, of a revolutionary change in the way society is run. We need, to have a different way of running Nigeria. We need to end the systemic and structural inequality that we have in this country, which is made possible, by the system of capitalism, so that inevitably we need to have a socialist way of running society. We need to have a situation whereby we have a government that is truly of the people and by the people, and that utilizes the wealth of this country in a judicious way to transform the lives of everyone. Unlike what we have now, where Nigeria has enormous wealth, but that wealth actually only goes, to make life, luxurious for just a tiny fraction of our population.
All right, so protest is not today's news. I mean, protest is something that has been going as long as like 1929, the Abbas women's riots and all of that. So even if we are focusing on the hunger protest and the SARS of 2020, I want you to still go back a little bit. You can compare, I want you to compare the protest so far. I mean, have you seen any significant changes? Do you see any transformation in terms of how people are coming out, basically, of the activism scenes in Nigeria?
Yeah, obviously we have seen transformational changes. What we saw with SARS was that activism, became removed from what you would call, the control of the traditional organizations, that used to lead movement in the past. Activism became something that was put in the hands of everyday Nigerian young people using social media, tweeting, and Facebooking. And I think that was an important development, because prior to 2020, when you are talking about protests in this country, about hardship, you'll be looking towards maybe the NLC, the trade unions, the student movement, and then some organizations that, have established themselves in civil society as platforms of struggle, like CDHR, like Joint Action Front, and all of that. But in 2020, you had, young Nigerians actually coming out, to protest against police brutality, and they sustained that movement, for as long as they could. And since that time, that has created a sense of confidence, that we don't have to wait, on some organization. We don't have to wait on some people. We can actually do it ourselves. And I think that's very, very important. And that's also what we have seen, in the current movement. Secondly, is also the use of a digital activism, which we have seen also since SARS, using Twitter, using Facebook, WhatsApp to try and mobilize for protests, to try and sensitize. That was also an important part of this of this mobilization for the end hunger protest, the end bad governance movement. And I think that this form of organizing is also quite very unique, because it also takes away the means of information, propaganda, sensitization from the hands of the traditional organs for this. Prior to 2020, if you want to mobilize for a protest, you would have to opt for some time on TV or some time on radio to be able to talk to people, or an opportunity for an interview, in a newspaper to be able to talk to people. But right now, right there on Facebook or right there on Twitter, people can galvanize social movement. People can say that we've got to do this. This is a time for us to come and we can no more continue to do this. And we saw that just a few days ago, for instance, with the arrest of a whistleblower, Pido, and how Twitter was utilized, to mobilize social hands, against the public hands, rather, against what was happening. We saw the attempt to, the arrest of a journalist, also, 2 days ago at the airport, and how, as soon as the news broke out, on social media, that put the police and the DSS, on their toes. So I think since 2020, we can say that we have had introduced into the process of activism in this country a new element of a digital activism, something which is not restricted to Nigeria alone, but it's actually widespread now across the world. And we saw it most particularly in Kenya during their own protests between June and July. That is also an important transformative, development in how social movements, are built and protest emerges that we have seen. And that's going to continue for as long as it takes, because it's a new system of organizing that coincides both with a technology that is in existence, but also with the culture of a new generation, the young people, whose means of socialization is mainly on the internet, than offline. But then, when it comes to whether demands have been met, whether we have seen any changes in the things we are fighting for, that obviously is a much more difficult question to answer. I mean, but you could say, for instance, when you look at NSAS, even though yes, NSAS achieved the immediate dissolution of SARS, it achieved some acknowledgement by the Nigerian state that there's a need for some changes in the way policing is done in the country. But since that time, it appears that things have just returned back to their normal. Police continues, to still wreak, havoc on people's lives through illegal arrest and detention. Even SARS does not exist anymore, but yet there are even much more terrible units of the police force that are in existence now that clearly just does the same thing. And in the last protest that we just had, none of the demands that we raised, have actually been met. So in that sense, we could say that perhaps we have not been able to achieve enough. But that's exactly where the conversation is right now, even within the movement, because since the end of the protests earlier this month, these conversations about how can our movement be strong enough, to be able to achieve much more pivotal changes. We're already having that. And one of the things we are looking at is that, yes, even though this digital activism and this new era of social struggle by young people has proven to be very, very, strong and resilient, but yet it doesn't seem to have the grit, of the past movement that we have seen in the country. And why does it not have it? One of the conversation we're having is that perhaps it could be because other social forces are not involved. For instance, the trade unions, they continue to not play a direct role in this struggle. During EndSARS, the trade unions played no role. In the current struggle, the trade unions are also not playing a direct role. So that where we need to go to right now is to have a unity of young people in struggle, but also the working class, the trade unions. And I think that is where we can be able to have movements that have strength, that have grit, but that also have the resilience to be able to break through barriers and begin to actually achieve those changes that we are fighting for. When we get there, I think it's only when we do this rather that we're able to begin to see some of those pivotal achievements or changes, in the issues that we are talking about. But it's also not going to take us very long to get there, because if you look at the way the situation is right now, in a sense, the Tinubu regime is already assisting us even in that process, because despite the fact that the NLC leadership kept saying that they were not part of the headband governance protest, the regime continued to attack them. So that in a sense, we need to ask the NLC now that if we are already being whipped by a regime, despite your assurance that you're not part of the protest against hunger, then why not just be part of the protest? Because the issues we are fighting for, it cut across. It affects workers. Despite the 7,000 minimum wage, workers are still one of the most destitute, class in the country today, because the wage does not, coincide with the rate of inflation, with the rising cost of food and other basic amenities. So that ultimately, we actually need the working class, the young people fighting together, arms in arms to change the country.
Thank you, Soweto. I understood your point, and I love the angle in which you're taking this conversation. So we have to go on this break. When we return, we are going to be talking about we are going to be going deeper into the conversation, and I'm curious to know why some NSAS protesters were just released after 4 years. Please be on stand. I'll be back right after this break. Glad to have you back. You're still on to West Breakfast. We are still having the conversation around how NSAS protests and hunger protests has transformed the activism phase in Nigeria. And of course, we are still seeking the expert view of Honorable Hassan Soweto, Mr. Hassan Soweto, my bad. Oluchi, you wanted to talk about something the other time.
Yes, so I don't want to cut the flow of our conversation. I want to take it up from what you said. But before then, I'd like to mention that the essence of activism and the intentions of it are actually truly noble, because we all seek, justice. We all seek a nation that is actually working. And if we're comparing it, like Somto mentioned, activism in those days, like the Aba Women's riots, it was spontaneous many times. There was no clear leadership. So I was going to mention something that you mentioned. You said there's no strong unity, as it were, for activism in today, because trade unions and some traditional setups are not even in full support of this, or they are, is it indifferent now? They're not fully engaged with what the youths are doing. So my question is, do you think a structured leadership could have helped probably our implementations of these things that we are protesting about? I mean, we know that the people that are very involved in protests these days, SARS, hunger protests, a large number of them are youth, are young people with that have unparalleled energy. They just want to get things right. But I don't see that leadership, as it were. Maybe some people like you, and then influencers and social media like you mentioned. But what if there was some structured leadership that can ensure that our claims are not just going into the air and social media is just carrying it out? Some people are actually looking into it to ensure it happens. I mean, compare it with what trade unions will do, like ASU. I mean, when ASU, trade unions, when they have their own needs that need to be met, they come together, there's structure. But for activism in today's world that we're seeing and the use of social media, it's almost like, yes, there's structure here and there, but it's not so structured in that sense. What do you think a structured leadership what impact do you see it can do in today's activism?
A structured leadership would take this movement so far. And that's part of the limitations of the recent movement we have had since End SARS. The absence of leadership means that this movement are not able to go far. And then at critical period, this movement are not able to take the kind of decisions they ought to take. But then there are those who also will tell you that the absence of the leadership also is why this movement have been resilient, because that means that the state is not able to buy off the movement easily, as they could have done with maybe a trade union-led movement or a student union-led movement. So in a sense, there are merit and demerit when you are talking about the lack of leadership of this movement. And our own approach, because coming from the tradition that we come from, I'm a Marxist, I'm a socialist, who recognizes that a class struggle, a movement, cannot run and succeed without some form of leadership that is democratically formed and that is quite up to the task of the struggle itself. But then we are also dealing with a young people, a young generation that have every reason to be suspicious of leadership. We should not forget that. And that's because leadership in this country really has failed, both at the level of the political leadership. People now equate leadership to people making promises without fulfilling it. They equate leadership to to nepotism, to people selling out the struggle of a people. And on the other side, when you look at trade union leadership, when you look at student leadership, that's ordinance sample, you also see that young people have a reason to suspect the ideas of leadership, given what leadership at those levels means. So conscious of all of this, the different dynamics of this issue, that's why in the movement right now, especially when we started on August 1st in Lagos, we avoided the use of the word leaders and said we would have organizers. In fact, the very first thing we did when we marched from Ikeja under bridge to Ojota on 1st of August, which was day one of the protest, was as soon as we got to Ojota, we immediately had a congress where we elected a security committee of 20 people and also had an agreement on those who will be organizers of the movement. And I think that that word organizers and that structure is what kept the Lagos protest as organized and as peaceful as it was. And on the basis of that, it's also why we have been able to keep the movement on even after the protest, because those organizers keep meeting. The size of the organizers now has increased to over 100, and they will keep meeting and meeting almost every few weeks. So, where I'm going really is to therefore say that what we need for social movement today are new forms of leadership that does not have the connotations of the past in terms of failure, in terms of sellout, in terms of corruption, in terms of elitism, that the leadership of the past used to connote, or a new forms of leadership that is more of organizing, of organizers, of not authoritative leadership or leadership that is out of control of the people they are representing, but organizers of movements that are democratically choosing. So in that sense, yes, the answer to your question is that we need such structured organizing of movements. If you want to avoid the word leaders or leadership, we need such structured organizing of movement to ensure that movements are able to have directions, they're able to have clear objectives, and that at critical times when movement needs to take decisions, those decisions can be taken, because you have, a group of people, who are doing the work of giving direction to the movement. Because inevitably, a movement would also have to negotiate, a movement would have to dialogue, a movement would also have to discuss at critical times, and this requires that there are a group of people who are meeting at different levels. So I quite agree with you that that's very important. But leadership, what it connotes now for the younger generation, is all of those negative element that I said before, which is why, we use the word organizers in the current context to be able to indicate that we don't want leaders in terms of elitist people who are outside the movement or who are now more powerful than the movement or who can take decisions outside of the movement. We are talking about people elected for the movement whose role is simply to organize the movement, it's simply to work for the movement, and they can be, they can be deselected at any point in time. They are completely, under the control of the movement, but their role is to work as staff of the movement on a day-to-day basis.
So to be honest, I hear you say a lot of things, and I can't agree with you with some stuff you've said, right? Now, let's talk a bit about this whole leadership thing before I even before I hit on my question. Now, you said that, we having leadership or structures and all of this thing would help, would have impacted the protest in a good way. Look at the NSAS time. We had the celebrities. Those people are leaders as well. Those people, they came together. That was a force, right, to ensure that the protest went well or will go well. Went well. I think that's it. Now, we had the hunger protest. We had Atiku come out to say that, before the hunger protest started, we had President Tinubu come out to say there was no need for the protest. We had Shetima came out to say, we have the aid of the president, that's Dada Olusegun, come out to say there was no need for the protest, right? Now, we had the likes of Atiku coming out to say, we had the like of Peter Obi coming out to say there was need for the protest and all of those things. Are those people not leaders as well? Now, I don't think it's, for me, I don't think it's a leadership thing. I think probably we should start looking at other better mechanisms, because over time protests has really not worked out. Look at the time, before we even get independent, right? When we had the Tafawa Balewa as the prime minister, you see that even around that time, there was a time when they did protests with the NCNC and the political parties as at that time. Protest has really never worked, to be honest, right? I think we should start looking for better mechanisms. But if you think it will work, of course, I would like to see what better strategies or what better opinions you would have in order for this protest to work. Now, let's talk about better mechanisms. Look at Ghana. During the time where they had issue with, with their leaders and corruption and all of these things, they had to bring all the, all these corrupt persons together and ensure that they had to do something very horrible, which I'm not saying Nigeria should do, but this is me just saying that of course, I'm not saying Nigeria should jump on that trend, but I'm just saying but we should start looking for better mechanisms. Look at what Gislover did to Akpabio, right? It's just to bring out few things that we don't know that this man is actually in oppression on. And guess what? He came out to apologize. So don't you think we should start looking at better mechanisms? Because like I said, if you go trace back, from history, you get to understand that this protesting has never really worked. And you just end up losing life, properties and all of these things. Yeah, you see, I feel like there are better mechanisms you should start looking at. But I would want to ask you what your opinions on all of these things I've said.
Well, my own reading of history, both human history and African history, actually shows that protest is the only reason why all of us are here today as free people. Without those protests you mentioned in the past, the Aba Women's Riot, the anti-colonial movement, I think that all of us speaking to ourselves today, we've been working on the plantation now, as slaves of the British colonial rule. It was the protest, both, on the street, but also in terms of a challenge, of the West African pilot and some of the new forms of journalism that came up, in the 1930s, that broke the back of colonialism. The formation of political parties, were also an act of protest against, the colonial rule, an attempt by the new African elite to try and assert themselves, to say that we own our country, we have the right, to lead it. So when we talk about protest, I think one of the challenges that we think of protest from the point of view of just marching on the street alone. Protest, it's not just about marching on the street alone. Marching on the street is just one form of protest. Protest is actually first and foremost dissent, a disagreement with the situation, and a desire to change that situation, utilizing every means possible. Marching on the street is an aspect of it, but also journalism, is an aspect of it. Challenging power, organizing political parties to challenge power is an aspect of it. A revolution, is an aspect of it. So there are different forms of protest and manifestations of protest. But when you talk about protest itself, as a term, we have to recognize that without it, there would have been no human progress. And when we go to recent history, for instance, look at just 30 years ago where Nigeria was. It was under military authoritarianism, military rule. It also took protest, marching on the street, but also challenged through journalism, investigative journalism and the likes, as well as the work of human rights organizations, sanctions and all of this for military rule to be defeated. And since the advent of civil rule since 1999, it was also protest that has ensured that we are still where we are today. You have to ask yourself, with the economic indices that you see today, let's suppose that we have not had the kind of protests we have been having over the past 20 years. Where do you exactly do you think the prices of goods and services will be now? Yes, they are very bad now, but just imagine if there have been no challenge. Because what protest also does is that it also makes a government to think twice, even when they want to do certain things. That doesn't mean they won't still do those things. But at least the fact that people can protest, or they have protested before, makes them to realize that they are not going to have an easy run on everything they are doing. And I think that is what has kept us a little bit alive, as Nigerian people. Otherwise, we can't even say where we'll be today. But I also agree with you, that there is a need to do things better. I mean, obviously, improvement is a crucial and important part of our lives. We can't shy away from it. So that obviously there are areas that we need to look at, especially in terms of how we steward, our protests, how we organize ourselves. Because even when we look at it, the end-back governance protest, except a few places where you can see that it was organized and without any incident, in other parts of the country, especially in the north, it actually led to all kinds of destructions and violence. And what we are calling for today is that there has to be a public probe panel, to be able to investigate, why the protests in this part of the country led to the kind of violence and destruction that we saw. And obviously, yes, a number of people were killed and over 1,400 people are in detention, including the national coordinator of my organization, Comrade Adaramoye Michael, who has been in detention for over 21 days now. So these are, incidents that makes you ask yourself whether protest is worth it. But I must tell you one thing, that you can't make omelets without breaking eggs. You can't liberate a nation, without sacrifices. Even at a personal level, you can't make certain, pivotal progress in your life without some sacrifices. And that's also how it is when it comes to, fighting to change a situation. I come from a tradition of student activism, like one of you mentioned, and I spent 10 years in the university, including 5 months in prison, just as an undergraduate student activist. For doing what? Simply, for fighting against the increment of fees of my campus. But right now, I'm here today, still fighting at the barricades. That doesn't mean that I've got no other jobs I'm doing. but it's also because it's very important that some of us, create the time, for our society. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how much you fight for your own self-preservation, for your own self-liberation, for financial freedom for yourself and your family. So far that you are still living in that society alongside other people, it means that the use of that society, the limitation of that society inevitably will still affect you and possibly even undermine your own individual effort at making progress. So that's why all of us, we can't afford to just say that we overlook or ignore. We have to organize ourselves and fight. And where are we going? We're not just fighting for just a few changes here and there. We need a permanent change to this situation of hunger and hardship in the midst of abundance. Why are our young people and professionals running out of the country? It is only because they don't see that their future, their dreams can be fulfilled in the country of their birth. And this is a country that is literally flowing in milk and honey. The only reason why we are not having the kind of life we should have is because we have a capitalist economic system that is corrupt, that is inequitable, and that cannot allow for progress for the mass majority of the people. We have to change the system. When we change the system, when our struggle gets to the point where we can change the system and replace it with another that works, that is when we can be able to say that our activism and our struggle has actually achieved, its objectives.
Doesn't it look like something that will not be achieved anytime soon? And then I'd like to ask, you said one of your boss was arrested, which is one of the major challenges of going out to protest. I'm curious, and I really want to know, why is it that when people are out on the street trying to protest, they arrest them? And when they arrest them, they keep them behind bars. Is there a body that you intend to put in place, or maybe your organization intends to put in place to defend these people? I mean, some people were just released last week, Friday, after spending 4 years in prison without being tried, without going, it just remanded them somewhere in one of the correctional centers. What are those things that should be done? Okay, we are coming out to protest. Do not pick up our people. Do not arrest them for no reason. And when you arrest them, they should be released under 24 hours. This person that you talked about is still there, 21 days. Doing what? Has he done anything wrong? Did he kill anybody? Let's throw back to when people in the north in Abuja, they were destroying properties. How many of them has been picked up? Yes, we heard of story that some have been arrested, but how many of them has been picked up with all sincerity? A young boy was killed on the street. They paid his father. Why is it that we are not, but like Yoruba will say, we are living something else, we are killing something else? Why is this done? What do you intend to do? Okay, yes, we will still protest again. We'll still come out to fight about something. Maybe when fuel prices finally gets to 1,500, we want to hit the street again. What do you now intend to do differently when it gets to another time to protest?
Well, like I said, would continue to ensure that on our own, we put as much safeguards as we can to ensure that protest leads to very little, if any, a negative incident like arrest, like death, and all of that, because it's also our own desire to be alive in good shape to enjoy even the benefits of the protest that we are having. Which is why during the last protest, we ensured that one of the first infrastructures we set up was a legal team made up of about 67 lawyers who were at our beck and call to respond to any incident of police attacks or arrest and all of that. We also set up a first aid team on the ground of the protest to respond to any situation. So those are things that we do, and we have to keep doing and improving on from time to time. But you also have to recognize that, when it comes to a protest, it takes two to tango. On our own, we can do everything we want, but you can't in any way anticipate what your adversary will do, which is the Nigerian state. Because what a protest is actually all about is that you want to change a condition of injustice. Injustice only exists because some people benefit from it. And those who benefit from it will never want to relinquish it easily. So regardless of what you do at your own end, in terms of safeguards, you may not be able to stop them from unleashing violence, and from arresting, from killing, which is why, even after a protest, we continue to ensure that we have infrastructures that continue to, fight for justice for those who may have been caught up in whatever is the attack or the violence that must have occurred during the protest. I mean, for instance, now, as I'm speaking to you, we are planning for a press conference tomorrow to amplify the call for the release of those who are currently in detention as a result of the protests. We are calling on NBA, we are calling on NM, we are calling on all professional organizations to join us. So we will not we will not stop talking. We will not leave anybody behind. That's also what we have agreed that after every protest, we must not leave anybody behind. Whether they are arrested or they are in jail because of the protest. But I also think that ultimately what needs to be done is for every Nigerian to realize that struggles to liberate the country, it's not just something that just a few people has to be left rather to a few people. Imagine if all of us, over 100 million, 200 million poor Nigerian people, are also talking about this case, shouting and saying that the Nigerian government must release these people. How that can actually amplify our voice. So that I think everything actually comes to the question of whether all of us are prepared for the kind of transformative changes we need in our country. So far, protests are just the preserve of just a few people, a few angry people, a few courageous people. It will be difficult to really achieve everything we want. But where you have the mass majority actually on the street, it is much more difficult for the state to defeat a majority of people on the street. It's not difficult for the state to arrest millions of Nigerians who are protesting on the street, but it's much more easy for them when the protests are small and when the organizers are just a few people, for them to just go around to pick those few people, hoping that that will be the movement. So I think that the final point is about all Nigerians, especially the young Nigerians, working class Nigerians, middle class Nigerians who are actually, struggling to survive, who are earning legitimate income in order to survive, not those who are looting the country. I think it's up to us to take a stand and say that we should not just leave these people alone fighting for us. We all need to now take a stand. And I think at that point, I will get to the critical point, when the Nigerian state would either have to bow, to the Nigerian people, or then, we supplant them and put in, a government that can actually work for the interests of the people.
So, Waito, thank you very much for your time. I mean, I look forward to that day in Nigerian history that will be bold and say, yes, our leadership bowed to our protests, like it happened in Kenya and it happened in Ghana. But for now, protest does not work until it works. We hope for a positive Nigeria. This is where we draw the curtain today. Thank you very much, Hassan, Taiwo, Soweto, for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, ladies. And that's it on today's episode. Join us again tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and also our primetime program, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Till then, do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.